I want to play you an excerpt from a debate we had at City Council last week on this whole business of people getting out on bail or not when they are charged with a gun offense and have previously been convicted or out on bail. And after 6:55, we'll take a few calls because I'm getting a lot of text action on this. I did get one from somebody, by the way, saying instead of sitting on a radio station, why don't I go out on patrol with the police during busy times? I have gone many times at the busiest of times in the middle of the night to watch the police do their job, and I can tell you right now, folks, you wouldn't want the job. I mean, it's a very, very difficult, complicated job, for which they're well compensated, but it's a difficult job, and I have been out, and I will continue to go out and continue to listen. I probably talked to 50, 75 officers over the weekend individually and heard from them about their experiences. And again, they said there's no easy answer. But more of that when we come back. We'll check on traffic. It's 6:43, 19 degrees in the city of Toronto. 6:47, and it is 19 degrees in the city of Toronto. Sunny with a high of 31, humidex 34 today. Breeziest around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's a little cooler as you'd expect by the water. Clear and 22 overnight. Tomorrow mainly sunny, high 33 with a humidex of 36. Thursday super duper humid, and it's going to be rainy, and it's going to be a humidex, believe it or not, in the mid to high 40s. A bit wet then on Friday, and looking ahead, it looks like a fantastic weekend. So look forward to that. Weather brought to you by Connecticut Water Systems. Discover the Connecticut difference at connecticut.ca. We're going to talk a little bit about the crime issue because it is, of course, the issue that's getting a lot of attention, and properly so, in the city. And we're going to here's something that Mike McCormack had to say. He is the Police Association president. I've been making reference to him over the weekend, so he should have time to have a bit of his say. Here's what he told CP24 over the weekend.
This is something that we've been talking about, for quite some time, and it's so disturbing. This is very concerning, not only to us as a police service, a police association, but as somebody who lives in the city. And we've been calling for action for over a year, and we need action. We need to stem this violence, and we need to do it now.
So we do need to take as much action as we possibly can. I guess if I have any concern that I want to share with you, and by the way, 872-1010, 416-872-1010, or by text at 71010, but we'll take a few calls after 6:55 on this issue. But I will say to you that he makes it sound awfully easy, and I will say without any hesitation whatsoever. I try not to get into this because I don't want to have what amounts to kind of a polarized or adversarial discussion. I think it's time we all work together on this. But to Mr. McCormack, and he's the union president, so I get what his job is. He has polarized this from day one. When the two little girls were tragically shot in that playground in Scarborough, before the people had made their way away in the getaway car, had said, so much for the safe city, Chief Saunders and Mayor Tory. And, look, we're all working together. I can assure you the police chief is working 24/7. His men and women are. I talked to a number of them over the weekend. We're trying to figure out what the tools are that will really work without oversimplifying it, to suggest that simply having more police officers on the street will answer that question. The fact is there are 170 uniformed officers that are being hired now, or in the process of being hired, and will be on the street by the end of 2018. But I will also say to you that there has been a process underway to civilianize some of the police functions, to allow us to redeploy police officers. We spend $1 billion on policing, and we have to redeploy some of the officers that are presently doing things, whether it's holding radar guns or directing traffic, and that's why we're hiring traffic wardens, and that's why we're bringing back photo radar in school zones. And we have to get some cooperation, which has been offered, I should say, by Premier Doug Ford and his government, and we're looking forward to some meetings with them because they started peeling back some of the grants in 2013. I had meetings with the ministers in the previous government in 14 and 15 to try and preserve those grants. And the other fact of the matter is, just so you know, the police budget is 90% wages. And so when you have a raise, and the raises have been more moderate in recent years, but going back, if you look back at the period between 2010 and 2015, the raises caused the budget to go from just the raises alone, leaving aside the cost of gas for the police cars or new police cars, from $888 million to $980 million. So that's $100 million that went to give raises to existing police officers. And I'm just putting all that into perspective when Mr. McCormack sort of says he has an easy answer, or that I should, or that Police Chief Saunders should. I'm not the chief of police. Chief Saunders is not a magician. They are working incredibly hard to try and come to grips with what is a very difficult, largely, not entirely gang-related issue, and that includes some stuff we have to do at City Hall to try and do everything we can to keep kids away from these gangs by providing them with more positive activities and things to be involved in the community. And those who criticize that don't understand. That's a huge part of this for now and for going forward. It's 6:51. We said we'd talk to a few of you, and let's go to Robert in Toronto. Robert, what do you think first and foremost we should be doing to try and stem the tide of this gun violence?
Well, a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, the gun legislation in Canada is very, very strict, and along with the penalties. So I think that is set, and that's not the issue. The other point I wanted to make is that when these people go into court, it's my understanding from what I've read, is a lot of the gun charges are either tossed or watered down because of plea bargaining. And that should not be. I mean, if you're caught carrying a handgun, a loaded handgun in Toronto or anywhere, for the purpose of robbery, those gun charges should not be tossed out. They should be there in place, and I believe some of those penalties are like 5 years in jail, and that's the way it should be. And none of this plea bargaining, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there, and I thank you very much for the call, and I think it fits in with the whole bail thing as well. I mean, I do believe that we have to try and divert people away from the justice system and give people a second chance, but I don't think we have to give third, fourth, and fifth chances, and that's often what happens when you either plea bargain or when you let people out on bail when they have violated the conditions of their bail the first time they were out on a gun charge. And they go back out, and the police will tell you this. I didn't make this stuff up. I mean, the police will tell you that that's what happens. They see the same people on the street hours later doing the same thing they were doing before, and it's so frustrating for them, as you might well imagine. Let's talk to Brian. How are you doing, Brian?
Yes, my comment is I'm upset about bail as well, but what you could be doing as mayor is letting your public know how many people are getting out on bail and when, and keeping the judiciary in the forefront. We need statistics. We need to know what's going on, and keeping children away from gang members, I think, is just it appalls me to think in Canada that this is one of our solutions. Get the gang members off the street and keep them off. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, I appreciate that. I mean, it's not, again, that simple as to say, well, if you just got rid of all the gang members, ideally you would like to have them rounded up and have all of them in custody. But the fact is they're not all going to be in custody, and some of them will go into custody. This is part of the problem. The police chief would tell you is that they go into custody, they're there for a period of time, and they get out. And there's almost a direct correlation a lot of the time between people getting out of jail after having been incarcerated and then, going back and retaliating on some score they had to settle from before they went to jail. So we have to have these programs. And look, there are a lot of kids in neighborhoods in the city that need to have these positive alternatives because otherwise, in a place where you have little hope and maybe where you've dropped out of school, we need to keep them in school and keep these programs going to make sure they have a positive activity with some hope involved in it rather than getting involved with the gangs. It's not a sad commentary on Canada. It's just a commentary on life. And coming up in the next hour, of course, we've got the roundtable, and this and many other things will be on the docket for our guests that'll be with us. And right now, it's 7 o'clock, and it's time for the news. Here's Russ Courtney.
You're listening to Mayor in the Morning. You heard right. His Worship Toronto Mayor John Tory is our special guest host on News Talk 1010.
Good morning, and I'm watching that text board, just so you know, at 7:10:10, and it's amazing. One guy sent in 54 messages this morning. I guess that's just all he does, and they're pretty angry. And I know some people are angry about issues, as am I, but it's just interesting to watch. So, coming up in this hour, we're going to have the round table, where we will, of course, talk about the policing issues, and that is something that is obviously on everybody's mind this morning. And we're going to talk coming up in the next few minutes, and we want to hear from you again. I think a lot of people want to be heard from and have a chance to chat with me. In days gone by when I was doing the afternoon show, there was more time taken up with phone calls, which I found a lot of fun. It is so great, I can tell you, when I go all around the city now as mayor, and I meet the people who were the listeners in those days, and I'm sure they still are listening to Ryan and Jay, but they're people who I had not met before. You sit in this room by yourself. Well, I've got Mike and I've got Jesse here, but I mean, you're by yourself in this room talking to all kinds of people you don't know and that you can't see. And so when they come up, it's a real thrill for me, so I urge you to do so when I'm out and about. But there's nothing like actually getting your opinion on something. And as you've heard me mention, and I'll set it up now so that after we check on traffic and whether we can hear from a few of you, I've been invited, which is nothing unusual, as the mayor, to go to a party hosted by the U.S. Consul General on July 4th, which of course is the United States Independence Day. And this party happens every year, and there's been a division of opinion mostly coming out of Ottawa, where they have the biggest of the July 4th parties. And there, the mayor of Ottawa, among many others, by the way, have just said, you know what, we're not going this year. No offense to the ambassador, but we just think for us to go and partake of their hospitality would be wrong when their president is saying the things he's saying and doing the things he's doing, but particularly saying the things he is about Canada and how we've been sort of somehow bad actors in all of this. And so they're boycotting the party. I had been advised originally that I should go, and that I should go with a view to expressing my view, and I would do it politely, but clearly to the Consul General and to others that in fact this is not the way you treat your best friend. That yes, there are going to be disputes, but surely there are better ways to handle them than to have the kinds of insults and belittling of our own Prime Minister, whatever people think of him. This is not the way that you go about this, and just politely registering that, and you don't get a chance to do that if you're not there. Coming up after a short break, and it is 21 degrees right now at 7:21, we're going to hear from Police Chief Mark Saunders, who's in the building, and we'll have a short visit with him before we check on the news at 7:30, and of course the roundtable coming up, and we'll have more chance to talk about the violence issue, and Stephen Harper going to Washington, and John Tavares signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're listening to John Tory, filling in for John Moore here on News Talk 1010.
Mayor in the Morning with special guest host Toronto Mayor John Tory continues on News Talk 1010.
Just coming up on 7:25, we're joined by Police Chief Mark Saunders. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having
me. I mentioned earlier on that Mike McCormack, the president of the Police Association, has kind of laid it down that he thinks the solution is just more officers, no matter what. That's it. Is it the answer that simple? I turn it over to you. I mean, you're the chief of police. You know these things.
Well, no, there are a lot of moving parts, Mr. Mayor, when it looks to that. Let's take the old fight before, the war on drugs. And so everyone ran down the hall with scissors for the war on drugs. And at the end of the day, what you had was brown and black incarceration and for low petty crimes, no results. You had this erosion between community and police. We have to be better about how we do business. The social cost of all of the police actions play an equal factor to our actions right now. So it's not what we do, it's how we do what we do, which becomes a more important figure. Having said that, when we talk about street gang violence, over 90% of the gunplay is associated with street gang members or affiliates of street gangs. You don't have to be a member of the gang. You can be an affiliate of a member of a gang. That's a big issue. There's a social issue to that is a bigger piece. Why are these young men making bad decisions in the first place? What are the resources that are put in there? Then, of course, when they do cross the line, those are the at-risk kids. When they do cross the line and they do pull that trigger and shoot someone, then they're now ours. And now we have to look at what to do to make those apprehensions. But then you go to the third bucket, the back end, that incarceration piece. And I'm going to say there's a difference between stealing someone's lunch money and shooting someone in the face. If you're going to shoot someone in this city, you should be incarcerated for a good period of time. There has to be a deterrent factor. But what do you do with that person in there? And when they come out, what are the mechanisms, programs? Because I'm telling you, there are very few right now. And so when they do get out, they're picked up by their fellow gang members and they're back into it again. So we have to look at it from a holistic perspective, and we have to figure out what the steps and measures are right now to make this thing work better than just putting more people in saturating neighborhoods.
Yeah, I made the point earlier on that a lot of them get out and immediately get involved in a retaliation for what might have gone on 2 years ago when they went to jail. But I also made the point this morning, and it created some controversy, saying, where did I get this from? And I said I got it from police officers who told me about this whole business of people getting out on bail, that as fast as you round them up, and I know that's what you're trying to do right now as we speak, that sometimes they'll be back on the street, seen by the same officers that arrested them, not hours, but maybe a day or two later, and that there's not much thought seemingly given by whoever makes the decisions, I guess it's judges in the end, about keeping them in custody if they're people who've gone and shot someone in the face and have a previous record.
Well, we all have to have a full comprehensive understanding of what role we play when it comes to community safety. And I think the more informed we are from all levels, from all stratospheres of the justice system, the better equipped we are to make those right decisions. But then again, going back to putting more people in the neighborhoods, now we're talking about happenstance arrest, because we know that street gang members, I have yet to see all of those moments where A shoots be in the presence of a police officer. It does happen. It's an incredible anomaly when that does happen, because a lot of people live within the particular neighborhoods. They know when the police are coming. They know when the police are leaving. That's when they come out. That's when they perform. We have to be surgical, strategic, and intelligence-based in order to streamline and pinpoint those specific members of the community without compromising the interactions with the regular community members in order to do this properly. So there are a lot of moving parts. We can't oversimplify it. And when we look at the modernization report, it's not about numbers. It's about doing policing properly. This is an exciting opportunity. Crime has changed. Before, you could lock your door and you were safe. But now, behind the doors, you're equally in compromise. I have to have resources for community safety in its entire spectrum, not just by what's going on the outside. So we need to get this right. There are a lot more moving parts. There are 32 recommendations, not just one. And by the way, with the one that everyone's complaining about, we're actively hiring. We are hiring right now.